he's all alone, some things will never change. The lonely loner seems to free his mind at night.
What's up guys, and welcome to your fourth Java tutorial. Today we're going to be going over variables, the different types of variables, and what they're used for, and we'll be applying what we can learn about variables to a new program. So the first thing you need to know about variables is that they're the memory addresses that store your data. And there are two different major types of data. There is class, and then there's the 8 primitive data types. And I'm not going to go over class data types because you can create your own. So I'm just going to go over the primitive data types because they will be constant and there's only 8 of them. And before I go into that, I'm going to go over some naming conventions to name your variables because every variable needs a name. And there's a couple of different ways you can do. Some people like to capitalize the first letter of every kind of word, but you got to remember that no spaces are allowed. So it'll be like my number for one of the variables or something. That can work. Another one is that they will put spaces kind of an under bar thing, and that's another one. What one I follow is I leave the first word as just small, lowercase, and any other words after that, the first letter is capitalized. And that's the most standard one to use. So, now without further ado, I'm going to get into where these variables can be declared. You can either declare them inside your methods, like public static void main, or you can declare them just inside the class, which is just after episode 4 in this case. So the first data type is byte. This is the smallest. It uses the least amount of memory, but it does not hold a lot of values. And the only reason you would use byte or short is that if you're trying to optimize the amount of memory your program uses, say you have a limit or something, it's not generally needed with our processing speeds nowadays, but say for a homework assignment or whatever, you could use byte or short. So in order to declare what type, you need to type byte, and it's all of the primitives are lowercase, and then you need to declare a name for it. So I'm going to call mine prim byte. And to declare it, you will do equals, only one, and then a number. And this isn't necessary, this is just declaring it, so we could just leave it like that and declare it somewhere else inside our program. We could call prim byte is equal to 2 here, and it wouldn't take it because we have a static, but just for an example, we'd have to make byte static, and then we'd be able to use it. But that's, again, getting into a little bit more advanced stuff. For now, though, we're just going to declare it all inside of the public static void main. And the second one we will be going over is short. So that's, again, short, all lowercase, and then the name. And these two are not generally used, but this next one is going to probably be one of the most used that you will use. It's int, and this just holds any integer value up to a certain point, and generally you don't need these other two because you don't really need to go smaller, but int only holds up to a certain value, so sometimes you'll need to go bigger, and that's where long comes in. And the long just holds a bigger integer value. And the reason you'll know if you need to use a bigger one is if your program will, while you're running it down here, it returns a negative number. So if it returns a negative number and it should not be returning negative at all, you might want to consider moving up to a long. And another thing about these 4 is you can typecast it, which means that, say it's a long, and then after a certain period of time it goes into the integer value range, you can typecast it which is just quotations, int, and then whatever value you get. So you, for example, it would be prim int is equal to int prim long, and that's how it would look. It's not going to work because we don't have prim long declared, but that's how typecasting works. And now we're going to go, now we're not always going to have nice even fraction or integers, so now we're going to get into decimals. And the first one that doesn't hold as many values is float. And this is just a floating point number. That's what float stands for. And it is useful, but you are more likely to use double. And double is really easy to remember because you just kind of D for decimals, and you're looking for just decimal points. I guess is kind of how I remember it. But and one of the last two is going to be letters, ASCII letters basically, and that is char. But char can be represented as numbers, so don't forget that. And the very last one, and probably the most important, is Boolean. Boolean will be used for loops and to end your programs, again with loops, but you will be using this so that your program can make choices. And there's only one more thing. If you have a variable that you don't want to change throughout your program, there's a keyword called final that won't allow you to change it later on through the program. So you'll do final, and then you'll do the data type, say int, and then the name. And the name for finals, they are generally in all caps. And that's just to show that those are final integers that are not to be changed. And then your value. So now that we've got all of the primitive data types out of the way, we're going to go over, I'm going to mention that Java is case sensitive, so whatever you name your variables, you have to stay constant with that throughout your program, otherwise it's not going to recognize your variable names. And I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and get on into our program, and we're going to be just making a simple program similar to episode 3, but it's going to display a greeting, and it's going to have a string variable. So let's go ahead and make that right now, and I'm going to name my name and set this equal to Jester. And you have to end each statement with a semicolon. So now we're going to do system.out.println with opening, and we're going to type in hello, and then a plus to concatenate the hello string with the name string. So it is adding Jester in here, and then the plus sign is making this all one string. That's hello space Jester. And save that and run it, and we will get hello Jester. So we can add more into this by doing another plus in quotes and just adding a period or whatever else we want to add on to that. So just go ahead and have fun exploring a little bit into the variables and printing out to the console. And that's all I got for you on this one. Thanks guys.